LibertyNation.com does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement.
Tucker Carlson has shown the door. So is Zooey Zephyr, trans legislator from Montana, and Donald Trump, retiring crooked Hillary in service of his campaign. All that and more right now on this episode of The Uprising.
We are The Uprising.
Welcome back to The Uprising, a podcast of LibertyNation.com. Joining me today, firstly, is LibertyNation.com's not senior political editor, but instead the editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donner. Lisa is a writer for the site as well and writes about, generally I think it's fair to say what interests you and what she thinks might bring value to the site, and is our Tucker Carlson point person this week. And that certainly is, I think, the major story, the deplatforming, the firing, I don't know what we're going to call it, but the dismissal of Mr. Carlson from the premier spot at Fox News. Welcome back to The Uprising, Lisa.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be here.
You're welcome. Always good to have you. And why don't you give us, so I'll just tell everyone, you were, along with your husband and my usual podcasting partner, Mr. Timothy Elting Donner, in the audience at the 50th Heritage Foundation anniversary soiree in D.C. days prior to his dismissal. So that was his most recent public appearance. And what was his vibe then? Was there any hint? We've heard, of course, that he didn't hear until right before going on air or something like that. But you tell me, was there any hint that, there was some issue in the air with Tucker and Fox when you saw him?
Scott, it was really bizarre because Friday night was the big gala. It was at out in Maryland at the National Harbor. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of people, maybe about 2,500 in the audience. He was the keynote speaker. But during dinner, I saw people lining up to meet him and get their picture taken with him. So everybody else is eating, but his food is sitting there getting cold.
Right.
And he couldn't have been nicer. So I lined up with the rest of them. I reminded him when we had last met. Oh,
you went up to say hi. Okay.
Yeah. And we talked. He took a picture. Tim took a picture of us together. He's disarmingly friendly in person. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got kind of this caustic hello, with a lot of sarcasm going on in his delivery. But honestly, in person, he was so come hither. I mean, loads of people were, like I said, lining up, and he wasn't saying, my dinner's getting cold, this is rude. He was just, sure, and how are you? I guarantee you he knew nothing. Nobody could fake it.
Okay, so his demeanor,
well.
I got you. Yeah, that's always a good, a good test is does this person have, Oscar level acting skills? No. Okay, then there wasn't. So let's get into the issues then. What do you think? I mean, I hesitate to put my own conspiracy theory out there, but I just see. Well, actually, I'm not going to hesitate to do it. I'm just going to say it. I think that Tucker is an anti-establishment voice, and because of his effectiveness in bringing to bear voices that challenge, for instance, the war and do so and are effectively mocking, which I think that a lot of these things can't stand a good mocking, and that's why mocking is important for a lot of this stuff. That's why he had to go. I don't think it's about dominion at all, and that's sort of my pet theory. So I'm interested to hear what your what the winds tell you. You have a long career in broadcast journalism, and you take a look at what's going on in the world of broadcast journalism and contracts and who's hiring and firing. And so you're the expert here rather than I am. So I'll take your expert opinion, please.
Well, let me just add that after my meeting him, I decided it was worth an article. So I wrote an article for LibertyNation.com called Tucker Carlson, Up Close and Personal. That was on Sunday. Then on Monday, all hell broke loose. And it was very bizarre. I can tell you, I don't ever remember a television network canning their most highly rated program. And Tucker Carlson tonight was far and away the cash cow for Fox. He crushed Anderson Cooper over on CNN, and he crushed MSNBC. You know, he was pulling in tons of viewers.
Hasn't this, I was just thinking today about this. Bill O'Reilly used to be the big Mahafa over there, and then he's gone, and I think Glenn Beck also was. So isn't actually, I wonder, isn't this sort of, you know, maybe not like the night before or the day of the broadcast, but they have let these guys go that were their, you know, their shining kind of crown jewel program, right?
Well, no, I mean, what you had with O'Reilly was a situation where you just had to go because of personal allegations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really remember a lot about Glenn Beck, but I can tell you there was no personal thing with Tucker Carlson, you know.
Yeah,
he does have a suit against him by a producer.
Yeah,
but
the facts that came out this week are that person, that producer, and I'm not even going to look up her name. It's not even worthy of mention. Has never met Tucker Carlson in person. Tucker records his show from Maine and Florida, and wasn't in any studio or office building with that person. That's entirely about some text reference that she thinks she can monetize to her benefit. So I agree with you. There's no issue there.
I didn't put it in either one of my stories because I didn't think it was worthy. So that tells you what I thought of it. But, you know, anyway, Monday comes along and everybody's speculating it has to do with Dominion. But what I wrote, and I wrote another article about him. This is the first time in the history of Liberty Nation I've written 3 articles about one person in 1 week. And what I wrote was that I think the problem there was that Tucker Carlson is uncontrollable. And that's really tough for a media outlet to handle. You know, bosses don't like employees that are uncontrollable. And he marched to the beat of his own drummer. But the way he's handled it, I think, is pretty significant, Scott. And the way that it was handled by
Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to interrupt you and say, let's go ahead and let's play Tucker's one statement that he's made really since the firing and hear him from his own mouth.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion, they're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
Well, it's funny. It sounds a little bit like he's making a commercial there for LibertyNation.com, the sponsor of today's podcast. Lisa, with his comment that truth is the most important thing because, of course, truth is making a comeback as one of the mottos and slogans of LibertyNation.com.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he waited several days before he said anything.
Yeah.
And then he did it exactly at 8 o'clock with exactly his opening. Good evening, this is Tucker Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was by mistake.
Right.
It was like, you can do what you want, but you're not going to shut me up. And then his message was so above it all. He didn't play with, this is about me and I'm being screwed and how dare Fox. But his message was really about us.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I thought that was very wise. And, he's had a long career in not just broadcasting, but in journalism. Okay. So he started as an intern at Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And then he moved on from there. And, he had a big stint at CNN during the Crossfire days.
The bow tie years.
Yes. And I'm also personally familiar with his father, who's an interesting fellow. He was the head of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And Tucker ended up being on a PBS show as well.
Have you considered offering him a spot at LibertyNation.com with?
Well, I would be one of 10,000 conservatives.
Uh-huh.
I mean, already OAN has extended an olive branch publicly. I think, Chris Ruddy is on speed dial with Tucker Carlson over at Newsmax. It's not over for Tucker Carlson.
What was he being paid
I wonder
by Fox?
I sort of wonder what's going on with Fox. I mean, earlier this year, they dumped Chris Wallace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good dumping for most conservatives. Now they dump Tucker Carlson. As I wrote, will the real Fox News please stand up?
Right. So what do you think? Do you think this is just they got to get out this anti-establishment guy and they don't care what the consequences are? They'll figure it out later what the deal is for their...
I feel like they just felt like they just couldn't control him anymore. And they really wanted to control him. And they knew that they couldn't. And it was making them nervous.
I think that one of the worst things I saw was in reaction to this was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's reaction with just joy and glee in her face and heart over the deplatforming and what she had to say about it.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country, I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go. Good things can happen.
Well, I think there's no end to the schadenfreude of the left over Tucker Carlson's firing, but I wonder if he will have the last laugh. Just before we came on, I started looking at the numbers of his tweet, and I believe they are unparalleled. I looked at Statista and a bunch of other sites right now, and we're recording Friday the 28th at 11 a.m. The number of views Tucker Carlson has got on his little video there, his 2-minute and 16-second video, is 21.7 million views.
And that's only on one platform. That's only on Twitter. So that's been replicated on Snapchat and YouTube and who knows where else.
That's not what they say in the industry is his reach is.
Right.
That's just from one, he's had let me see. What is this? Views. Wait. 217,000 retweets, 21 million views, 89,000 comments. This guy is not going anywhere. And I actually wrote yet another article. Will he go into the media again? And my feeling is no, he won't, because he's been there, done that. I mean, he's been on every platform. And
well, his he was wealthy. He started out wealthy, and he got quite rich with his Fox contract, and probably deservedly so, given the number of viewers he brought. But what about those concerns? Where can he go to make a dump truck full of money like he did at Fox? Or you think he's not interested in that? He's got enough?
Well, I stopped trying to look up his net worth because it's all over the place. Some people say it's 30 million. Some people said he gets 20 million a year from Fox. Other people say, no, he only gets 8 million. Then other people say 6 million. Let's just say the guy is loaded.
Right.
Okay. But I think more importantly, let's not forget he was the hand behind the Daily Caller. And even though he cashed out of that, he's got a lot of very wealthy friends that would,
roll a new operation of
they
some
can
kind.
drop 10 million to burn. I mean,
Right.
Whatever. So, I would think the smartest thing for him to do is to start his own media empire. The Tucker Carlson media empire. I know other people think, well, he'll just do a podcast. I don't see that. Television is more his speed.
Yeah.
And even though there are video casts like we're doing, I think he wants to do a television thing. But, I don't see why he doesn't start on Twitter. I mean, he's got, what does he have for followers? Let me see here. Okay, he's got 6.7 million followers.
Yeah, the new Twitter video stuff. He could do a show right there. With Elon's ownership, who knows?
On his really good night, Scott, he was pulling in maybe 3.3 million viewers on Fox. So he's got double that on his own Twitter. Not to mention, I believe they added a lot to Twitter, like you can have up to 10,000 characters or something like that.
Yeah, well, you can now post longer form video and audio, and people can certainly go ahead and visit the Uprising's Twitter feed at Podcast Uprising.
Absolutely.
That's where we post. And LibertyNation.com is also on Twitter. And, it's important to mention, I got you here on the show. I'm fortunate enough that I don't really do this dance much, but you are constantly aware and have to manage the threat of viewpoint-based discrimination on these social media sites and media production sites, to where we're constantly worried. They're going to just remove our stuff. Matt Walsh was deplatformed from, I think, YouTube or Twitter this week for some trans. He refuses to use the pronouns of trans people the way they want them to, and that kind of stuff. So maybe Tucker's better off, going with an Elon Musk Twitter rather than somebody else who might decide they don't like the way he talks.
Well, exactly. And look, censorship is a real issue, and I find it just amazing that the left is now so pro-censorship. I mean, they were, decades ago was just supposedly the opposite, but what they've done is they kind of feel like if you don't agree with me, you should be shut up.
That's exactly what they think. Did you see the quote by Tim Robbins, the famous actor?
No, what did he say?
So Tim Robbins on Twitter posted this tweet that said, recently independent journalists, naming Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, and the other Twitter Files journalists, have been exposing massive censorship operation by the U.S. government to control content on social media and eliminate any dissenting voices. Have you heard their reporting, or are you listening to the embarrassed, compromised hacks from the media that are covering their tracks? Could be the most important story related to our personal freedoms in the U.S., and it's being buried. Mainstream media have not only ignored the story, but now attacked the journalists, effectively serving as a thuggish censorship arm of the government. Meanwhile, Jim Jeffries, Stacey Plaskett, and Jerry Nadler threatened journalist Matt Taibbi with jail time. What an embarrassing, shameful time for the Democrats and the, quote, free press. You are losing any shred of credibility you had, you f***ing fools. Oh, and by the way, free Assange. That is Tim Robbins.
Wow. If that's Hollywood speaks, that'd be interesting to see if anybody else backs him up. I think
he's a real leftist. That's why he's a real free speech guy, not a Democrat, just no matter what, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, I think things essentially turned when Musk took over Twitter. That's when it all kind of changed, because finally somebody was in charge of one of the big platforms and wasn't going to step on people. And that's what has, I think, the left so frightened, frankly, about Twitter. They can't control it. And so they can't control Musk. They can't control
the world
Carlson,
because of the messaging.
And that's exactly what what Robbins is talking about, is what Carlson was saying. There's a few outlets left, few places where you can get the truth, and that's probably enough. And I think he's right. You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, step out of underneath the banner of the big New York Times or the big boys, and do your own thing. And I think now is the perfect time. Look, there's Substack, there's Twitter, there's so many. We watched what's that podcast? No Agenda. They have their own. Don't they have their own platform?
Well, their value for value model is their unique thing. I wanted to ask you a question.
No, aren't they on Mastodon or something like that? They're not even on.
Yeah, they are on Mastodon. That's right. They run their own server, I think. I wanted to ask you, when during the night that you were with Tucker at the event, did you decide that you wanted to write a piece about it, or was it after that?
No, I kind of sat on it a little bit, because I don't generally write profiles, nice profiles of people. I'm usually writing about the media or writing about things that interest people. And I wasn't sure this would, have any, there was many ways to go with the Heritage 50th. I mean, there were the people who got the awards. Diana Davis Spencer got the Claire Booth Luce Award. That was a big deal. It was the 50th year of Heritage. That was a big deal. But then, I sat down and thought about it. And it was actually Tim that said to me, no, I think people would be interested in what he's like personally, because he comes off as so brusque and rude. And and as I said, I had some interface with his father and stepmother many, many years ago at a friend's home in Georgetown, and then again at our home. And he's really a chip off the old block of his father. And I believe they're very close, as sort of makes sense. And so, having known, 2 generations of this family, I thought maybe people would be interested, and they were.
Okay.
Tucker Carlson can take his toys and go home. He's 53 years old. He's got enough money to be happy, and like I said, fish and hunt in his rural perch up there in Northeast United States. But I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to go away. I think he's going to come back, and it's going to be on his own terms. And that should really frighten some of the people on the left.
Well, they built him studios in Maine and Florida, and I guess he gets to keep those probably. So he'll maybe put them to good use, and we'll keep in touch with it. Anything I missed that you want to bring to the people?
No, I think that last phrase about sums it up. I don't think this is the last we've heard of Tucker Carlson.
Lisa K. Donner, LibertyNation.com, the sponsor of today's podcast, the editor-in-chief of that fine publication. Thank you for joining us once again on The Uprising.
Good to be here, Scott.
Stay tuned for a segment with LibertyNation.com senior political analyst, and Lisa K. Donner's husband, Mr. Timothy Elting Donner. Ciao.
Bye.
Welcome back to the Uprising. Timothy Elting Donner, LibertyNation.com senior political analyst.
Hello, Scott. I've got a hard act to follow, but I'm going to do my best.
Good to see you once again on the big show.
The big shoe. You sound like Ed Sullivan. Boy, do I date myself there? Huh?
We're not going to talk a lot about the war today, but I did dispatch myself, Tim, to where it all began. World War I, that is. We had a week break, and before that, we had Dave Patterson discussing the World War I memorial on the show. And even though LibertyNation.com did not sponsor my trip abroad to visit the former site of the Habsburg Empire and the site of the Archduke Ferdinand's assassination, I'm happy to bring that knowledge to the show in any case. And I saw where it all happened. That's where I went when I was away. Other places?
Yeah, one quick observation is that so many people think that World War II was what changed everything, but in fact, it was really World War I, which was supposed to be the war to end all wars. But in fact, I'd say like 52 million people died in World War I. It's just, it's mind-blowing.
There's I wish I remembered who I saw or read say it first, as it were, but there's a quote in the libertarian movement where they say that, before that assassination of Ferdinand, you could cross any border anywhere around the world with any amount of money and a firearm on your person,
right?
Without so no papers, as much as you wanted, and any gun.
Well, it was globalism, right?
Yeah.
That began in the wake of World War I. Before that, nobody thought about, any global in global proportions. Of course, this is just when, air flight was getting ready to become regular and everything, which did change things too, to be sure. But I like when you say that thing about before World War I, you could the passport firearm. I think that's why. That's a big part of the reason I say that was the bigger world changer.
Now one of the reasons why I really appreciate the work that Tucker Carlson did is that he was often a voice for or a platform for putting forth these anti-war voices, for the right to digest and for the world to digest. And so I spoke with Lisa about the Tucker issue because she covered it for LibertyNation.com, the sponsor of today's podcast. And she said in, rather no uncertain terms that maybe we're not the biggest Tucker fan prior to his dismissal. And I know that you were in the audience when he spoke at the Heritage Foundation event immediately prior to his dismissal. And so I just wanted to get your brief, points about Tucker. What do you think of his firing? Maybe why you weren't as big a fan, and what do you think Fox is up to and what they should do?
Well, I mean, it's a huge risk on Fox's part because Tucker was by far the most popular host. His was the most popular program by far, really throughout cable news. And so you have to think that it was something pretty egregious that happened, which we may never find out what it really was. Although you could say, look, it happened right after the Dominion voting settlement. You've got to think that part of that settlement might have been that they'd agree to the terms only if Tucker Carlson got fired. We can't prove that. But what contradicts that is the fact that up to noon, the day that they fired him, they were still promoting his show that night, up to noon. And the fact that they let him go or parted ways, as they put it, with 5 hours notice, nobody on his staff was told, no replacement was put in place, makes me think that something must have happened suddenly and jarringly. So I don't know. On the one hand, I think it has to be part of the Dominion. It could be part of the Dominion settlement, but there were other Fox personalities, such as Maria Bartiromo, who talked about it, talked about Dominion at length, and she was not fired. Maybe she will be, I don't know. But on the other hand, the suddenness of it, I mean, there was no hint the Friday before he was fired, 3 days before, we saw him at the Heritage Foundation 50th anniversary bash over in National Harbor. And he was in fine federal, is that the word from
Fine
the
fiddle,
Ed Sullivan era? But he was in fine form, and he was looking from 50,000 feet instead of 500 feet. And he was talking about the lack of trustworthiness in media anymore, that people are involved in things that they're doing because they're cowards and they can't stand up to obvious half-truths and stuff like that. So it's interesting, Scott, and I'll just finish with this. The book ends to his parting of ways was that speech where he talked sort of almost in metaphysical terms, and then his first blush after the parting of ways, where he put up a video on Twitter, didn't even mention the firing, but again went big picture. So I think he's, pretty much disgusted with.
Well, what I want to ask you, without necessarily putting on a tinfoil hat, it seems to me that it's more likely that if he's truly anti-establishment, and we believe, if somebody would kill someone or do something nefarious for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and we know they'll do it for far less than that, what would they do for trillions of dollars or even more in terms of power and control? So I just wonder, does his anti-establishment discussions, do they build a case for maybe that's the reason why he's dismissed from Fox News and not this Dominion suit?
I would expand it a little bit from anti-establishment to describe him as a gadfly. And the thing about a gadfly is that you cannot control them. Him, her, she, her, he, him.
One of the
whatever their pronouns may happen.
We're going to get into pronouns. We're going to get into pronouns in just a minute, by the way. And
here's my impression, though. He tosses around conspiracy theories, freely, as if there's no consequence at all to it, and mostly there isn't, but there was with Dominion. And some of the stuff that he put up about January 6th, that it was like a false flag operation, that it was set up by the far left.
Talking about Ray Epps all the time.
About what?
Ray Epps, for instance.
Yes, talk constantly about him. Talks more about, JFK assassination theories. This kind of stuff reduces, in my mind, his credibility. Maybe not his popularity, but his credibility, because he's right on point on a lot of his stuff. But then there's maybe, 10, 20% that's just kind of crazy stuff. Now, and I think that Fox executives had sort of had enough. But what I can't understand is how they'd be willing to do this while having no ready replacement in mind, because this is just tanking not only their viewership, but their stock. Fox Corp stock dropped precipitously in the next several days after Tucker was fired.
I'm not calling you old, so don't take it that way. I'm just asking.
Hey, look, I referenced Ed Sullivan, so I think I'm kind of out of that closet.
Well, what I was going to ask you is part of that your distaste for his entertaining of these types of theories? Is it that you think that like a major broadcast, like because of his position atop the premier, time slot of a major media outlet, demands that he not flirt with theories that are unproven, or is there some other thing that's sort of going on there?
For example, I would not be in favor of someone saying the rooster crowed and the sun rose. So therefore, the rooster crowing caused the sun to rise, right? Ray Epps, whatever it is, you can take one thread and turn it into an entire work of art, right? And that's kind of what he's done. And I think some of it is to try and just get attention, get clicks, get views, and attract attention to himself, to Fox Nation. But of course, in the case of Dominion, they paid a steep price, and I just don't know. Look, I don't know what the hell Fox has in mind, because their viewers are furious.
All right,
if they took him out and said, "Here, we've got this guy who everybody likes to replace him," that's one thing. But
we got Cosenza hired away from the Uprising. We're putting right in there. Okay.
Well, you would not leave, given the cushy lifetime contract.
Listen,
that you have with.
They built Tucker's studio in Florida and Maine, and LibertyNation.com paid for this microphone and camera I'm using right here in Virginia, at home, right at home. So it's the same setup, pretty much, as far as I'm concerned. You know.
I think the interesting speculation is what Tucker might do next, and whether he can continue to. He'll prove that he's either so independently popular that it doesn't matter that he left Fox, or he'll see that the Fox platform was a big part of what made him so popular.
I think that's definitely true. Also, to me, the loss is people like me who are interested in hearing voices, for instance, that might be skeptical of war talk, are still going to find those voices. It's the people who aren't seeking them out and looking for them, that they're going to be denied maybe hearing from those sort of perspectives. But let's go ahead and move along. You mentioned pronouns a minute ago, and I'll tell the audience that before we started today, I mentioned I wanted to talk about this Zooey. What is Zooey
Zephyr?
Second name, Zooey Zephyr.
Zooey Zephyr. That's actually a real name.
That's not a train, by the way. That's not
and it's not a made-up name.
It is a good name for a train, but
it's not a rap artist, which you might think with a name like that.
I think they'll have to have numbers in their names now, so it'd be like 9 Zephyr Zoe or something like that if it were a rap. But so Zooey Zephyr is a trans woman who is elected to the Montana House and is now banned from entering that house. Basically, they sort of have voted to shun her. And so Montana's just like, we've seen this in Florida. A lot of these Republican-controlled states are putting in these laws that are trying to, from the perspective of the legislatures, protect children from the social contagion trans sort of stuff where, very young children, or not very young children, young people who would not be allowed to, for instance, get their ears pierced without, parental permission, or they would not be allowed to legally get a tattoo, for instance, are allowed to, alter their bodies in ways that will forever forbid them from having children, or, lifelong consequences, basically trans surgeries for people that haven't even entered adolescence yet who say they are trans. And the legislatures are like, hey, we're not going to go along with this. If these people want to transition, they can do it when they're adults, but not when they're, not when they're children. And there's this whole tension there. Well, she stood up and basically said they had blood on their hands, and then held a microphone aloft to a rally that disrupted the body. And that's what this is about. So let's just play the first part where she said they had blood on their hands. That's what sort of sparked it all. This is Ms. Zephyr on the Montana floor.
This bill tries to define male and female as binary. You could not legislate binary sex any more than you could legislate that the earth is flat. Intersex people exist, trans people exist, and this bill doesn't change that. If you are forcing a trans child to go through puberty when they are trans, that is tantamount to torture. If you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands.
She said they'd have blood on their hands, and basically they took that as the House Speaker said that was a violation of the decorum of the House, and until she apologized, she wasn't going to be recognized to speak on the House floor. And then during the discussion of some bill that she said was anti-trans, one of the things I kind of can't stand about this person is anybody who claims to speak for all the people who are of this group, like she is trans. So she does have a more important voice maybe in trans issues than some other voices, but she doesn't speak for all trans people because they're not all in agreement. The idea that, just like this, black person doesn't speak for black people and a white person doesn't speak for white people, right?
This is one of those things where I try to invoke if someone landed on Earth for the first time and knew nothing before this.
I love this way to think about things. Yeah, agreed.
They would think, man, this planet is messed up. They can't even figure out the difference between a man and a woman.
Well, not only that, that's the most important issue confronting them. That and the horrible racism that people confront on a daily basis in America. I think it's really not that hard if you're a person that values civil liberties, and it is that, once you become an adult, it's up to you what to do with your body. But to be able to basically dismember, in a sense, a very young child or a teenager before they have any sense of how they're going to turn out. And the fact that it can be done so many areas in this country without the consent of the parents. In other words, they can be counseled on how to do it at school. Yeah.
And the parents are not entitled to find out.
Tim, we have examples where this
is so insane that you can't, even in today's world, the idea that there'd be a significant percentage of Americans, a few percent at least, who think it's perfectly fine to chop off a child's genitals and to put them through hormone treatments that will completely change their bodies, their minds, and everything. It's not even.
Is there another area where elective procedures are 11-year-olds are allowed to counsel themselves with respect to?
Of course, the other thing is now with abortions, of course, that parents are not required to sign off on their teenage child having an abortion, so it can be done with private counseling.
I don't want to complicate things
in school too. Yeah,
with another nuclear issue inserted into this discussion. But one of the other things I just wanted to mention is, in addition to what you said about with the non-parental involvement, we have a lot of sort of evidence that there's these sort of like pro-trans school people, school counselors and teachers that will secretly pump up and aid a young person's transition or without the without the parents' knowledge. There's also the case where there are non-custodial parents who are saying, this is my son or this is my daughter, and the custodial parent is saying, no, they want to be trans and there's nothing that the other person can do about it. And they're saying my 11-year-old doesn't know what they want. They're a child, and
they don't have a clue of who they are.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I
did you? I didn't have a clue of who I was when I was about 30.
I mean, to say that I think it's ridiculous to suggest somebody who's prepubescent has any understanding of this in a way that we would say, oh, it's appropriate for them to, to say to a person that you're never going to be a father or a mother, and that you can make that decision when you're 11 and understand it, I think is really awful. Because but
you want to talk about what torture is.
But in any case,
torture.
One thing I'm sure of is that it's not inappropriate for legislatures to discuss what medical procedures may be visited upon children. That's appropriate. And the idea that it's somehow a torture or bigotry to discuss that, I think is totally wrong. And so what's her last name again? Zooey
Zephyr.
Sorry. I was going to say Zimmer. Sorry. What Zooey Zephyr did then was, after they couldn't, or she couldn't, I'll use the preferred pronouns, couldn't speak on the House floor because she was banned because of the saying that they had blood on their hands. When she was denied the right to speak, the gallery erupted in basically in protest. And then what did she do?
Right.
She
So
held
she
the
didn't
mic
get up. She had
aloft.
She had people brought in to.
Yeah, but
protest.
otherwise,
Right.
but what she did was the speaker said, please leave the floor of the legislature to the legislators. And the Republicans, by and large, left. The Democrats went to the wings of the chamber. But Zooey, Ms. Zephyr held off, basically she was the only one who stayed on the floor, Tim, of the legislature and held aloft her microphone in order so that the protesters' chants could be given voice and broadcast. And that is what they have said is totally inappropriate, that you have a group who's completely disrupted the work of the legislature in violation of the law and their rules. And instead of, going along with helping to retain order, she basically gave them, boosted them up and egged them on. And that's something that's not acceptable. And I think that I have to say that, boy, I'm tempted to say that I think that's an appropriate thing to do to this. We can't we're going to bring the heckler's veto now into the legislature. And she said herself that she would refuse to basically go along with the rules if she didn't like the legislation. Let's listen to her in defense of her actions.
And when the speaker asks me to apologize, what he is, on behalf of decorum, what he is really asking me to do is be silent when my community is facing bills that get us killed. He is asking me to be complicit in this legislature's eradication of our community, and I refuse to do so, and I will always refuse to do so. I would also say that if you use decorum to silence people who hold you accountable, then in the name of all you are doing is using decorum as a tool of oppression. Additionally, when the speaker disallowed me to speak, what he was doing is taking away the voices of the 11,000 Montanans who elected me to speak on their behalf. And when I continued to not be recognized, what my constituents in my community did is came here and said, that is our voice in this body. Let her speak. Let her speak. And when the speaker gavelled down the people demanding that democracy work, demanding that their representative be heard, when he gavelled down, what he was doing is driving a nail in the coffin of democracy. But you cannot kill democracy that easily. And that is why they kept chanting, let her speak. And why I raised my microphone to amplify their voices, to make sure that the people who elected me here are heard. And that when this body seeks to pass bills that harm our community, that get us killed, that this body is held accountable for those actions.
I think they'll do an episode of Yellowstone about this right out in Montana.
I think they're going to, we're not going to talk about the election until the next segment, but I think that Biden might dump Harris for her. That's the
she is extremely well spoken. Yeah. Boy, let me just put it this way: if I was a transgender activist, that's the woman I would want, or the person I would want representing my interests.
Oh yeah,
because she makes it sound. I mean, she's pretty effective.
But if you parse the language,
I don't agree with almost anything she says. But she is. But if you parse the language, to me, she's saying like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing that. I get to do this because the stakes are so high. I get to do this, and this is something that has, if you look at sort of what's in the social media stuff about transgender activism, what they say. A lot of transgender activist types coach children to tell their parents and authority figures that they will commit suicide if they're frustrated in their attempts to engage in transition. And it's sort of one of those things where, and not in a genuine way, in a way that is simply a threat to basically beg the parents off from
enforcing any kind of, brakes on the transitioning process. And so I just thought that when I heard that, and I'm familiar with that from just looking into that just issue generally, and when I heard her say it, I thought, boy, she's now bringing this tactic into the legislature. So if lives are at stake, then all of a sudden the rules of decorum don't apply, and then she gets to exercise sort of her veto on the process. And I just thought all that is a natural kind of outgrowth from what we've seen from academia, from the heckler's veto on speech things. And it's just like, here's another thing now where in service of her case and her argument, she gets to say, well, I don't have to follow any of the rules. This is outside the thing. This is different. This is so important that we don't have to.
What might ultimately come out of this, Scott, is something even worse, where legislatures who are having to fend off these kind of outbursts decide ultimately to shut out the public altogether.
Yeah.
So that they do their
all on Zoom
work
now.
in
Just go to
private.
the internet. Yeah, look at it. We're streaming it live. Go ahead and look there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, frankly, with the live streaming these days, it might not be the worst idea because everybody can see it. Everybody can see it if they want to.
That should be in addition to the in-person experience.
Well, I agree. But what I'm saying is actually these days, the streaming is more important.
Yeah.
Because, tens, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions more can see it than could fit into the the few seats in the gallery at the Montana legislature.
So I just wanted to clear it up, and I've seen this misreported a lot about, it's just sort of like an attack on a trans legislator, which is why I investigated it in the first place. Like, is this just a bunch of Montanans who hate somebody for being trans? And it seems like they just, they're not in favor of her arguments, but also it's how that she delivered them is the reason for her censure. So she basically now, Tim, is interesting how it works. She doesn't lose her seat. She keeps her seat, but she's not even allowed in the chamber. So she couldn't vote on anything or anything like that. She's sort of like shunned by the, that's what it is, like an act of shunning.
Well, it would seem to me the next step for an activist like her would be to then proclaim her grievances publicly. Probably made a bunch of speeches, have rallies, protests, and that'll make her an even larger figure.
She's going to ride this absolutely right. Oh, yeah. No, she's going to be. Yeah, that's why I made the joke about Kamala replacing Kamala. No, she's doing it just right in terms of, she's going to be working from the hallway now. I'm sure
the fact she's being, she's got a grievance. She can, like so many on the far left, it's all about grievances.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and transition. There you go. How about that? Into
that's nice.
A little political discussion. I've missed your political analysis and prognostications during our absence from live production of the podcast, Tim. So let's turn our attention. I think really, I don't know if you have that. I don't know if you have an apology prepared or how you want to handle it, but you have said many times on this program that Joe Biden would not run for re-election to the presidency of these United States, Tim. And in my absence, we found this announcement.
If you really want to do it right, you'll go back over every episode of the show and find a pull quote where I said, Biden's not going to run.
I know. If I had the staff, this is where. By the way, you'll see in your email inbox a request for a budgetary adjustment for a production staff, so I can I can have somebody on that. But
as the sun rises, we raise the flag, a symbol of all that we hold most dear as Americans: courage, opportunity, democracy, freedom. They're the values and beliefs that built this country and still beat in our hearts. But they're under attack by an extreme movement that seeks to overturn elections, ban books, and eliminate a woman's right to choose. Joe Biden has made defending our basic freedoms the cause of his presidency. The freedom for women to make their own health care decisions. The freedom for our children to be safe from gun violence. the freedom to vote and have your vote counted, for seniors to live with dignity, and to give every American the freedom that comes with a fair shot at building a good life. In small towns and big cities, we raise our heads, our eyes, our hearts for America, for the idea of this great country. Joe Biden is running for re-election to make certain that the sun will not set on this flag. The promise of American democracy will not break.
Democracy must not be a partisan issue. It's an American issue. As your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me.
For freedom, for democracy, for America, Joe Biden.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Biden says that establishing liberty for the people has been the central focus of his presidency, and that's going to be the focus of his campaign in his second term. What comments do you have to?
Well, now that he says that, I guess I think he should run unopposed. I mean, if it's all about liberty, and I'm certainly he wouldn't lie about that, Scott.
Well, you did.
But seriously,
you did write for the pages of LibertyNation.com about a potential challenger to Mr. Biden, Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Is that his?
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
I also wrote about, and I think this is the way that if you're a Republican strategist, and they're way ahead of me, but I'm figuring if I was a Republican strategist, what I would be doing is really in the title to my latest piece on LibertyNation.com, which says Biden announces, but is it really Kamala on the ticket? Because as a Republican who's either running against him or strategizing or whatever, any Republican should make the case that a vote for Joe Biden is really a vote for Kamala Harris. Because, yeah, a lot of us thought that he wasn't going to run again because we actually took him at his word when he said, I'm just a transitional figure. I'm basically a placeholder.
Not this host,
for a rising generation of Democrats. Okay, at first we took him at his word, but the only reason we did was because even he must realize how stumbling and bumbling he looks and how old, even beyond his 80 years, he appears.
Tim, let
me say this. Let me finish the point, because you have directly accused me.
I'll allow you. I'll allow you, Counselor. Go ahead.
Okay, so
did I put you off? I'm sorry.
You put me off so badly.
I'm sorry.
You succeeded, Counselor. In
let's work our way back through it.
I object.
Take a minute and see if it comes back to you.
But here's the thing. Okay, whether Joe Biden intends to stay in the job through 86 years old when his second term would end or not, nobody could rule out the idea, far from ruling it out, that at some point in his second term, when he really has become almost non-compos mentis, that he would quietly step aside, let Kamala take the top spot to give her a boost, the boost of incumbency, for her to run in 2028 for the top spot. Because frankly, if they don't do that, she's got no chance to win, it seems to me. I still think she has little chance. But the point is, it's the strategy. The strategy is to say, look, you vote for Biden, you're voting for Kamala, because she's probably going to become president. And even if she isn't, she'll be the nominee in 2028. So do you want Biden and then Harris? And I think on the issue of Biden not running, I believe my actual quote was, Joe Biden should not run in 2024.
Don't tempt me to delve into the archives, Tim.
Okay, so I lied. So sue me. I ran for political office once. I get to lie from time to time.
I would say that, just for the record, The reason why I absolutely was firm that Biden would run for re-election is because of the way that the president of the United States and those around him get to live like a king in royal
The perks are just too great to step away. Yes.
I was on several airline flights these past 2 weeks and went through security a number of times. Boy, that's inconvenient. Wouldn't it be nice to just walk on the plane when you were ready to go somewhere and have them take you wherever you want to go?
Very few people give up the perks, the privileges of the presidency voluntarily, even if they feel like they're sure they're going to lose. I mean, it must have been painful for Lyndon Baines Johnson to say he didn't want to run again, but Vietnam was so bad. But he was the last sitting president to say, I don't want a second term. I'm not going to run for a second term. So look, the trappings of power and the fact that Biden spent half a century trying to get to where he is now, why should he give it up? You know, I suppose that's true. But, you know, most Democrats don't want him to run. They want someone else. The problem is they can't tell you who that someone else is.
Yeah, it's not just him, though.
Biden can claim, look, Biden's number one claim is he already beat Trump once. Yeah. And so he can do it again.
And my claim is it's not even necessarily Joe Biden himself who wants this.
It's Dr. Jill.
Ron Klain, it's Jill, it's everybody around them. Who will lose it for whoever the next president is. Jill Biden's going to have to go through airport security if Joe Biden is not the next president of the United States. And that is something I believe she cannot abide.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Cosenza on the centrality of air travel to presidential decision making.
Fantastic. Let's go ahead and listen to Donald Trump's reaction to the Biden announcement. All right, I'm going to play.
I did not see this. This should be fun.
Oh, there's one clip that I'm going to cut into it, and it's just you'll see.
As you know, I've done very well against crooked Hillary Clinton, but today I'm going to do this, and I think this could be maybe the most important part of what I'm going to say, because this is going to be a major announcement. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? I will be retiring the name Crooked from Hillary Clinton and her moniker. And I'm going to give her a new name. I don't know, like maybe Lovely Hillary or Beautiful Hillary. But I'm going to retire the name Crooked so that we can use the name for Joe Biden, because he'll be known from now on as Crooked Joe Biden. You would think that Hillary would be very happy today. She's out there someplace celebrating. Because there's never been anyone in the history of American politics so crooked or dishonest as Joe Biden. And the press absolutely refuses to report it, all that press back there. Because frankly, they're just as crooked as he is, and they are.
That's just great. That's so good.
I can't believe, and I'm certainly delighted to be the bringer of this news to you, Tim. I can't believe that you haven't seen this reported more widely, that Crooked Hillary is now to be retired. What do you think, as the senior political analyst, this kind of effect will have on the campaign? Do you think the Crooked Joe will gain purchase with the people and accrue to Trump's benefit, or...
Crooked Joe Biden, I'm trying to put that, through the evaluation meter.
Yeah.
I think he could do better than that.
Bounce around.
I think he could do better. That one's already been used. He's got to come up with something else, I think. But look, I'm also going to lead people to I said it was...
Tim, let me boost up your piece about Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
Latest published on the pages of LibertyNation.com, the sponsor of today's podcast, the people's source for conservatarian news and analysis 24/7. Go ahead. Please discuss it.
Well, look, I think that there's no question that if you asked rank and file Republicans across the country, the question of do you like Trump or DeSantis, which one do you favor? At this point, more people favor Trump, but many love DeSantis as well. But what about if you could team them up? Now, that's pretty much, most people have sort of ruled that out because they've said that Trump's ego is way too large.
I believe that to be the case.
And so is DeSantis's, to accept number two, and for Trump to accept that he could have anything but a pliable, shall we say, loyal VP like Mike Pence. So it was sort of ruled out as kind of like a pipe dream. But the ever reliable page 6 of the New York Post,
your hometown paper,
reported this week that Trump is listening to top advisors who are advising him to take DeSantis as number 2 on the ticket if DeSantis would take it. That he's listening, but as they say, there's no deal yet, which makes it sound like it's going to happen, but he just hasn't decided yet. I'm not at all sure that's true, but there's obviously many advantages if DeSantis, first of all, DeSantis gets on the national stage. He gets his platform. He has 4 years, if Trump wins, he has 4 years as vice president to display his wares, so to speak, before he can run in 2028. And then Trump has someone who, yes, he will suck some of Trump's oxygen out of the room. But at the same time, Trump won't really have to look over his shoulder at DeSantis because Trump can't run again after 2024 anyway, or he could run again, but he can't serve more than 4 more years. If this was an 8-year deal, there's no chance that Trump and DeSantis would go for it because Trump would be looking over his shoulder, thinking DeSantis was going to form, a separate power base. And DeSantis wouldn't want to sit around for 8 years in a position that Vice President John Nance Garner once called a warm bucket of spit, although I think the P might have been replaced by an H. That's arguable. But with a 4-year run here, this is the most possible, certainly the most attractive proposition possible for Republicans, because on top of getting the 2 guys that stand head and shoulders above other Republicans in popularity, it would short circuit what is currently looking to be an extremely ugly primary, which will do nothing but divide the Republican Party.
That's where we're headed, sir. I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's any way either one of them will go for it because of their own egos. Well, does
DeSantis think he would have a better platform by being, look, he's going to be out as governor of Florida in 2026.
I just don't think, Tim, that Trump can let him be his own man. And I think DeSantis knows that. And I think that also we're plumb out of time. I know
what if both of them come to the conclusion that neither one of them is going to win without the other? That's the point.
I don't think either one wants to be in business with the other one, regardless of the outcome.
Well, that may be true,
that's
but
my speculation.
I can tell you, it's something for conservatives to dream of.
And on that note,
team.
We'll let you go until next week. Pleasure being back with you. And
you too, my friend.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
We are the Uprising.
Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe space.
You only did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.
That's it for this edition of The Uprising. Remember to hit Liberty Nation News for original articles, LN Radio, and our signature television program, The Conservative 5. Just go to libertynation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Scott Cosenza. Thanks for joining The Uprising. This program is a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.